Why do animals have such different lifespans? Slow version. For the microscopic lapworm, C. elegans, life equates to just a few short weeks on Earth. Compare that with the tortoise, which can age to more than 100 years. Mice and rats reach the end of their life after just 4 years. While for the bullhead whale, Earth's longest-lived mammal, death can come after 200. Like most living things, the vast majority of animals gradually degenerate after reaching sexual maturity, in the process known as aging. But what does it really mean to age? The drivers behind the process are varied and complicated, but aging is ultimately caused by cell death and dysfunction. When we are young, we constantly regenerate the cells in order to replace dead and dying ones. But as we age, this process slows down. In addition, older cells don't perform their functions as well as younger ones. That makes our body go into a decline, which eventually results in disease and death. But if that consistently true, why the huge variance in aging patterns and lifespan within the animals' kingdom? The answer lies in several factors, including environment and body size. This complex powerful evolutionary pressure on animals to adapt, which in turn make the aging process different across a species. Consider the cold depths of the Antarctic and Arctic seas, where a Greenland shark can live to over 400 years, and the Arctic clam, known as the quahaug, can live up to 500. Perhaps the most impressive of these ocean-dwelling anges is the Antarctic glass sponge, which can survive over 10,000 years in freeze waters. In cold environments like these, heartbeats and metabolic rates slow down. Researchers realize that this also causes a slowing of the aging process. In this way, the environment shapes longevity. When it comes to size, it's often, but not always, the case that larger species have a longer lifespan than the smaller ones. For instance, an elephant or a whale will live much longer than a mouse, rat, or a bird, which in turn has years on flies and worms. Some small animals, like worms and flies, are also limited by the mechanic of their cell division. They are mostly made up of cells that can divide and be replaced when damaged, so their bodies expire more quickly. And size is a powerful evolutionary driver in animals. Smaller creatures are more prone to predators. A mouse, for instance, can hardly expect to survive for more than a year in a wild. So, it is important to grow and reproduce more rapidly, like the evolutionary defense mechanism against its shorter lifespan. Larger animals, by contrast, are better at fending off predators, and so they have luxury of time to grow to large sizes and reproduce multiple times during their lives. Exceptions to the size rule include bat, birds, mole, and turtles. But in each case, these animals have other adaptations that allow them to escape predators. But there are still cases where animals with similar defining features, like size and habitat, age at completely different rates. In these cases, genetic differences like how each organism's cells response to threats, often account for the discrepancy in longevity. So it's the combination of all these factors playing out to different degrees in different animals that explain the variability we see in the animal kingdom. So what about us? Humans currently have an average life expectancy of 71 years, meaning that we are not even close to being the longest living inhabitants on Earth. But we are very good at increasing our life expectancy. In the early 1900s, humans only lived an average of 15 years. Since then, we've learned to adapt by managing many of the factors caused the death, like environmental exposure and nutrition. This and other increase in life expectancy make us possibly the only species on Earth to take control over our natural fate. One more with original speed. For the microscopic lab word C. elegans, life exists is just a few short weeks on Earth. Compare that with the tortoise, which can age more than 100 years. Mice and rats reach the end of their life after just 4 years. While for the bullhead whale, or the longest living mammal, death can come after 200. Like most living things, the vast majority of animals gradually degenerate after reaching sexual maturity in the process known as aging. But what does it really mean to age? The drivers behind the process are varied and complicated, but aging is ultimately caused by cell death and dysfunction. When we are young, we constantly regenerate the cell in order to replace dead and dying ones. But as we age, this process slows down. In addition, older cells don't perform their functions as well as young ones. That makes our body go into a decline, which eventually results in disease and death. But if the consistency is true, why the huge variance in aging patterns and lifespan within the animal kingdom? The answer lies in several factors, including environments and body size. This can place powerful evolutionary pressure on animals to adapt, which in turn make the aging process different across the species. Consider the cold depth of the Atlantic and Arctic seas, where a greenish shark can live over 400 years, when the Arctic clam, known as the coho, can live up to 500. Perhaps the most impressive of these ocean-dwelling anxious is the Antarctic glass sponge, which is survived over 10,000 years in freezing waters. In cold environments like these, heartbeats and medical rates slow down. Researchers realize that this also causes a slow observing aging process. In this way, the environment shapes longevity. When it comes to size, it's often but not always the case larger species have a longer lifespan than smaller ones. For instance, an elephant or whale will live much longer than a mouse, rat, or a vole, which in turn have ears in the fly and worms. Some small animals like worms and flies are also limited by the mechanics of their cell division. They are mostly made out of cells that can divide and be replaced when damaged, so their body expires more quickly. And size is a powerful evolutionary driver in animals. Smaller creatures are more prone predators. A mouse, for instance, can hardly expect to survive more than a year in the wild. So it is able to grow and reproduce more rapidly, like evolutionary defense mechanism against its shorter lifestyle. Larger animals, by contrast, are better at fending off predators, so they have the luxury of time to grow up large sizes and reproduce multiple times during their lives. Exception to the size rule includes bat, bird, mole, and turtles. But in each case, these animals have other adaptations that allow them to escape predators. But there are still cases where animals with similar defined features, like size and their habitats, age at completely different rates. In these cases, genetic differences like how each organism cell responds to threats often account for the discrepancy in longevity. So it's the combination of all these factors playing out to different degree in different animals that explain the variability we see in the animal kingdom. So what about us? Humans currently have an average life expectancy of 71 years, meaning that we are not even close to being the longest living inhabitants on Earth. But we are very good at increasing our life expectancy. In the early 1900s, humans only lived an average of 50 years. Since then, we've learned to adapt by managing many of the factors that cause the death, like environmental exposure and nutrition. These and other increases in life expectancy make us possibly the only species on Earth to take control over our natural fate.